This is my new quilt washing technique, and it's one of the best ways I've ever found to do the washing. Part of the washing of the quilts was that if you put it in a tub, it folded back on itself and it did some really strange things, and it was hard to get the water out. So this works so much better, and it's so much faster and easier. The first thing we need to do is to sew the pockets on the top and the bottom, and we found that it really works much better to have it at both ends. And now we'll go on and show you how that's done. I finished the quilting on the piece, and it's a pretty small piece. I've also trimmed the outside edge of the batting, not the back of the quilt, but just the batting part, so that bulk will be out of the way. And I have a 10-inch strip of muslin. It's actually more like canvas, so you want it a little bit more dense because of the weight. I've sewn that together, and these I'm going to keep and reuse them on different quilts. Now I want to start in the center, and I have it just sitting on here, floating on it, and it's just on the background right there. And that's one of the reasons why you want to trim your batting off, because it gets kind of bulky and weird. I'm going to sew it real close to that same line that I sewed to get the pocket, and I want to start in the center. And what I'm going to do is baste across it, just a baste to hold it, and then I'll sew it solid coming back, and then I'll baste this side and then sew it solid coming back. What causes the biggest problem with sewing the pockets on is the batting that's underneath it. So if you've trimmed that, this is really easy to sew. And if you don't have a long arm, you can actually just sew it on a regular sewing machine. So we're going to baste it, and they're about a 1/2-inch baste stitches. And that's just to secure it so that it won't stretch, because it's really important to not have the pocket stretch on you. I've gotten to the end of the pocket. Now with this pocket, we want to make sure that we backstitch just a little bit. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit because there's a lot of stress on the outside edge. And remember, we're just basting it on. Now I'm going to stitch it and just go back and forth. And now we'll stitch it all the way across. At this point, we're going to baste it all the way across, and at the end of the pocket, you want to secure it a little bit and then stitch back. We're going to finish this off camera, and then we're going to show you the washing. I use Orvus soap for this, and you can get it on Amazon or online somewhere. Really works well, and it cleans incredibly well. It's all organic and all of those really good things that you want for your quilt. We bought a car wash wand, and it was about $20 off of Amazon, and it just works really well. It's perfect for this. And one thing that we needed is a reservoir for the soap, and we have that right here, and we filled it about halfway with the Orvus. All right, we're going to soak the front and the back, and it has to actually soak in for a little bit, about half an hour. We want the soap to actually do its job before we rinse it. So we want to completely soak it, and we'll probably go over it 3 times with the soap on the front, and then we'll also do the back. We actually live in Arizona, so it's really quite hot here. And if we leave this with the soap in it, it will actually get dry, which is perfectly okay. So you don't need to worry about it, but kind of regulate it a little bit with your weather. We've sprayed the entire piece, both the front and back, and we're going to let it sit and let the soap do its job. Depending on your area, it's Arizona, so we're not going to let it sit long, but it's about a half an hour. So sometimes you have to do it a couple of times to get your marks out. So you'll be the judge of that, how that works for you. So we're going to let this sit and we'll come back and rinse it. We've let this sit for about 20 to 30 minutes and we're going to rinse it now. After we rinse it, we're going to wash it again with the soap and let it sit for a bit and then rinse it out. Now, if you have a piece that has a bleeder in it, you do not want to let the quilt dry. You want to keep washing it until that bleeder isn't working anymore. I normally recommend that you pre-wash your fabric, especially if it's hand dyes or batiks. You make sure that you pre-wash. Normally you don't have a problem with prints, but those hand dyes and the batiks, you've got to pre-wash them, and you can do it in the Orvus. But if you do have a bleeder, which I have had many, many times, I keep running water through it until the bleed stops. We're going to go ahead and rinse the front and the back until the soap is all gone, and then we're going to wash it again. We've rinsed the front and the back, and it took about 5 minutes. We want to make sure we get all the soap out, and then we're going to repeat the process. And this is what really gets the marks out. If you have marks in your piece, really makes a huge difference to do the second wash. We're going to soap up the back and let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes, and then we're going to repeat the rinsing. When we're working on the piece, you want to make sure that you spray it enough, and it's usually 2 to 3 minutes on either side. And if you feel like your marks aren't coming out, you want to do it again. We're going to start the second rinse, and you want to make sure that you do it until the water runs clear. So we'll go ahead and get started, and you want to do the front and the back. We're going to finish rinsing this. We're going to do the third wash and rinse off camera. We finished 3 washes and 3 rinses. We're going to let this dry for an hour or so, come check on it, and we're going to let it dry outside in the air. We let this drip dry for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. We checked on it every now and again. Once that time was up, we brought it inside and we laid it on a flat surface with air circulating with a fan, and then let it dry overnight. Want to make sure that you know not to use a power washer. That will actually destroy the piece. We just wanted to use the house water pressure to make sure that this is nice and clean. If you have stubborn markings on it that seem to not want to come out, you want to use your car washing unit and just go over that a little bit more than the rest of the piece. With this one, the marks came out completely after the third wash, so there are no markings on it now. Before that I used this technique, I used to put it in a big tub, either my regular big tub or my hot tub. It was horrible to get those things clean. It was really, really hard work, and it wouldn't drain right, and I couldn't rinse it completely, so there were markings always left that I had to spot clean. With this technique, none of that stuff happened. It was just so easy and actually fun. Most of the actual washing was done by my son, and the rinsing. He loved doing it, where not so much. I did enough, and then I just let him take over. It's just really fun, actually, to wash the quilts. And you can use this technique on any quilt, whether it's done or not. If it's an older quilt that you want to clean, you can do this technique also, as long as it's not too threadbare. I love this technique so much, so we're going to be even re-washing old quilts. Because what happens when you wash in the tub or any other way, even in the washing machine, is it doesn't completely wash all the soap out, no matter how many times you rinse it. And you cannot leave foreign stuff in a quilt, or else it will compromise its longevity. So you want to make sure that you use this technique. And we also use softened water. So it worked so well. It made me really, really happy.